So this is what we're making, an articulated pearl pendant using a freshwater pearl. For this one we're using a freshwater pearl, half drilled, and it's 10 millimeters in diameter. Well, a lot of your half drilled freshwater pearls have a flat bottom. And what we're going to do is make a cup that matches the curve of the pearl so that it looks like a round pearl. If you have a round pearl fully drilled, you can use it also. It's just what you would do afterwards would be, after you glue it and the glue sets, you would just file the end where the pearl peg comes through, and you'll just have a nice, smooth, shiny piece at the end. There's nothing wrong with freshwater pearls. If you have the chance to use South Sea pearls or saltwater pearls, do. They have more of a sheen than the freshwater pearls. They're a lot more expensive, which is why we're using the freshwater pearls for this endeavor. So nothing wrong with them. It's just that they're not quite as pretty as a saltwater pearl. So first thing we're going to do is make a little cap that goes over this. It's basically a bead cap. So not quite a third bigger than this diameter, because we don't want a full hemisphere, but we do want a nice smooth curve. So I'm just going to punch out a disc with my disc cutter using 0.5 fine silver, and fine silver because I don't want it to tarnish later on and have to try to polish it. So this is the size of my disc cutter, and you just look down through the hole and make sure that the metal is completely inside the hole. Put a piece of the metal on the opposite side. Snug that down. So there's our disc. Now you can see that the disc is not quite a third bigger than the silver. So what I'm going to do is dome this, and we want to make sure that the disc fits inside the dome, and we want to make sure that the doming punch is smaller than that. So we want to leave enough room for the metal. So almost, but not quite. So I want to dome it just a little bit more so that it matches the curve of the pearl a little bit more. So the neck's smaller. And once again, make sure the punch clears. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, if you want a pattern on this cap, you need to do it before you dome it. And don't drill it before you dome it, otherwise it'll stretch the hole out. So now I've got a nice plain cap. I'm going to drill it and polish it because you don't want to have to try to polish it with the pearl on it. So it's just a matter of using your center punch. And when you see that bump on the top, that's quite thin now and it's quite easy to drill. So I'm going to drill with a 1mm drill bit. And when you measure your drill bit, you can measure it on the large part of your verniers, but be sure you turn the drill to see what the real size is, or you can come right down here where there are no flukes on this shank and measure it down here. Don't measure the big part, measure it right up here. So before you polish it, put it on your sanding stick and make that flat. It'll look a lot better when you put it against your pearl. So you want a dull finish on the edge so you can see what you've done. So polish this and we'll continue with the rest of it. So we're going to take our 0.8mm square wire, file the end flat, with your number 2 cut flat hand file. Now take your flat round pliers and make as small a loop in the end as you can. So right down at the very tip end, tight against your finger, roll it tight against your finger until it touches. So what I'm going to do is solder that, and then I'm going to center it. You could center it now, so it looks like that. But as long as the end touches, and a little piece of hard solder. So I've got this on my charcoal block. Mix up the flux and flux where you're going to solder. A small piece of hard solder, and this is solder wire, 0.5mm in diameter, and the cutters are 1.5mm wide. So I'm going to put this just touching the outside because I don't want the solder on the inside. It doesn't matter if it is, we could always drill it out. So your neutral flame, just warm this up from a distance until your flux goes clear. Well, till your flux dries out. And once it dries out, move about 50 mil away. The flux will go clear and the solder will run. That's it. Now shift it before it cools off. If it's stuck to the charcoal, warm it up again. Don't just pry it off. And what I usually do is flip it over, have a look at the other side, because we want both sides to be pretty. Quench it and pickle it. We're going to make a bail now, because it'll look more like proper jewelry rather than just a jump ring. So what we're using is 0.7 thick. I usually don't want to use anything less than 0.7 because the thinner stuff wears out more quickly. And 1 millimeter is too thick. It's too difficult to bend. So 0.7, 8 millimeters wide, and roughly 30 millimeters long, 3/0. So you're going to mark the center on either end. You're going to mark the middle, and then what you're going to do is 1 millimeter on either side of the center, or 1.5 millimeters. This is 1.5 millimeters. You want to come out 1 mil, so you have either a 2 or a 3 mil wide end. We don't want it to a sharp point. So just scribe a line from the center to that outside line, and then you'll have your piece, after you cut it out and round the end with a flat number 2 cut hand file, you're going to have your piece that looks roughly like this. Now, drill about 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeters up from the end, one hole, 1 millimeter in diameter, and hole mark it. So this is going to be the back with the hole and the hole mark. Then you're going to form this into your bail shape. Use either flat round pliers or bail pliers, and when you form it around these, it forms it around it straight. When you use the flat round pliers, they have a bit of a taper and you have to go back and forth. So if you have a set of the bail bending pliers, use them. It makes your life easier. Then what we're going to do is take our 1 millimeter round wire, put it through the hole, solder it on the inside. I'll show you. File the end of your 1 millimeter wire flat, and what we're going to do is drop it through the hole. So you can open this up a little bit, and then we're going to solder the wire to the opposite side where there isn't a drill hole. We want that to be invisible. So flux that spot, and one piece of hard solder, one small piece of hard solder. Place it with your flux brush. We want it sitting against the wire and against the bail. Neutral flame. Dry it out, and after it's dry, if the wire isn't touching the bail, the solder wire, push it where it wants to go. So I'll zoom in a little. In. And I'll go on the side opposite the solder, and I'm just kind of bouncing the flame off the charcoal block against the bottom of the bail, so the flux has gone clear and the solder flowed, and that's what I want. So quench it and pickle it at this point.